All right, everybody, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the How to Retire from NASCAR DFS live preview show. I am your host, Jason Hamlet, and today we are gearing up for a spicy date with none other than the infamous Lady in Black, Darlington Raceway. She's charming, challenging, and she's dressed to impress in her unforgiving stripes. So let us prepare for her sweeping curves in an afternoon of delight filled with rim riding and, of course, slide jobs. And what's a date without a great wingman? Luckily, we've got one of the best in the DFS biz, our daily fantasy wingman from Daily Fan Racing, Ryan Larkin.
Hey, what's up, man? Yeah, I was getting things situated, and I heard something about jobs and
Slide
rimming,
jobs,
and
rim
I have
riding,
no
slide jobs, man. Come on, man. It's Darlington, baby. Sloppy
idea.
slide jobs, probably.
Excited to have you back, Jason. Hopefully, you can make it a full show this week. That's certainly my goal. Pretty excited for this race. I love Darlington. It's literally my favorite track to go to in person. If you've never been, make it a habit of going at least once every couple of years. It's the best view, best experience for my money in racing. So definitely recommend it. The racing is usually pretty good as well. I mean, I know it's going to be pretty boring for the first stage or so tomorrow, but once we get into the heat of battle towards later in the race, it's usually pretty good. And overall, I think it can be a good DFS track for us, although Xfinity was very frustrating today. It was really, really good until I wasn't. So overall, though, I think it's a fun track and one we can have some success at.
Yeah, I'm excited as well for Darlington Raceway. And I'm gonna be honest with you, Larkin, that I haven't really done a whole lot of research for this thing. Like, I am really feeling the retired life. I ain't gonna lie, man. I honestly fell asleep at the end of the truck race, so I didn't even watch any of that. I missed my boy Ross Chastain, right, winning. So I feel like I'm really living the retired race. Today, I missed the entire Xfinity race. Didn't even watch it, man. I was out coaching soccer, dude. Like, yeah, man. Team 4-0 though. Yeah, well, soccer coach 4-0. Yeah.
You're
But
amazing.
I need you this weekend, man. Man, I definitely need your help. So I hope you brought your stuff for us.
I did. It's a fun one. This is actually, I was talking to a friend of mine who does, I don't want to say where he works, but he works for one of the prop sites, I guess. And we're talking about the site, and it's just an interesting one because it's not cut and dry. There's really good plays, and at some point you're going to be forced off one of the really good plays, and you're almost going to be forced into a play you don't want to make. But if you hit that play right, then you can really, hit big on this slate. So it's kind of an intriguing one for me. I mean, there's some obvious dominators, there's some obvious, place differential plays, but then there's some really good second tier tournament options that could be the key to this whole thing. And if you try to force in those best plays and those obvious plays, you're going to be forced off some really good plays. And I just love the whole setup. So I think there's going to be some opportunities to be different and to hopefully win because of that and to avoid some chalkiness because there's going to be some really chalky plays on the slate.
Yeah, and obviously we want to let's get into the things. I know you're starting to get ready to break things down, right? I know you're excited to talk about it, and I will try to avoid from having a little premature finish with old Dirty Darlington talking about Dirty Darlington tonight. So yeah, let's before we get into it, right, I do want to point out, like, we are awfully close to 500 subscribers, right? I think we're at 499. For some reason, you guys couldn't even push us over 500. Like, I think we've been sitting 5 away for like 5 days. We're within 1. So if you have not subscribed yet and you found our channel, please push us over that 500. It's a big deal for us. It's been a long journey to get here, and thank you. Also, like, comment, don't forget to subscribe. I think we got a giveaway at the end, right? We're celebrating and giving away some tickets here at the end, so stick around for that. We'll be announcing it. So Larkin, you kind of started talking about it. We love Darlington. It puts on a good show, right? We got tire wear, but what's it mean, from NASCAR DFS? How do we approach this any differently than any other week? Is there something we should consider that we typically normally won't consider?
So there's really 2 things that I consider when I come to a track like Darlington or Richmond or things like that, and that is the tire wear and how that affects fast laps. So last week we saw Derek Kraus be optimal because he got 29 fast laps simply by pitting off cycle. Well, that's going to be more extreme this week here at Darlington where there's greater tire wear. So that's going to make me want to spread out ownership a little bit more and kind of bring everyone back into the slate, especially those cheap guys. So that's one major impact. And then while it is a 400-mile race, it's nearly 300 laps, which is greater than most 400-mile races because it is, only 1.3 miles in distance. It's not 1.5-mile track. So this is pretty much a cut and dry 2 or 3 dominator track for me. And I do lean a little bit more into those dominator points because it's really hard to pass the leader here. We'll get into that with Reddick. But for me, it's a tricky one overall because like I was looking at the past stats, and over the last 6 races, no one has more than 3 top 5s here, which is abnormal. Like Denny Hamlin has finished top 5 6 of the last 7 races at Kansas, right? Like a more predictable track. Darlington's not that predictable. I think only like 1 or 2 drivers have 4 top 10s in the last 6 races. Everyone except for Joey Logano has a finish outside the top 20. Every single driver in the field. So even your most trustworthy drivers, the Hamlins, the Larsons, all those guys, they've crashed out here. They've made mistakes. They've done something stupid. They've gotten bad finishes. So that makes me want to spread that ownership out even more and bring some other guys into play. So as much as I'm just sitting here like Tyler Reddick, Kyle Larson, those are obvious plays, Chase Elliott from the back, it's like a lot happens here. And a lot of that's maybe self-inflicted with the Chastain and Larson and Truex Rex last year. But some of it's just Darlington reaching out and biting someone, right? It's some guy getting into the wall, cutting a tire or something of that nature. So there's a lot of variables that just seem to happen here that we don't typically see. And so I do like spreading my ownership out a little bit more. And because of that tire wear issue, if someone decides to run long, they have the ability to rack up fast laps and really boost their score. So I also like spreading out ownership because of that.
Yeah, I see some good questions coming in here. I think you kind of already answered those questions, but I did forget to mention that we are going to have another giveaway on this show. We're going to choose a winner for who asked the best question on the show tonight. So if you think of something, throw it in there. It might get you a free entry to the 100,000 to first place tournament for DraftKings for this slate. My next question was going to be, is this a single entry type race? It's definitely not, right? It sounds like you're kind of spreading things out, right? You're going to play that variance, right? You want to probably, covering some bases in the value and, with the guys up top. But so help me understand, how many lineups do you anticipate that you're playing tomorrow?
So I'm typically a 5 to 8 lineup person. I hand build everything. I have strongly considered doing 150 lineups and playing a mini max just for fun. Because I do think there's a lot of ways you can go, and I'm kind of interested in trying to tackle that. I don't know where I'll sit. I'm probably going to sleep on it, or I'll see what I'm feeling like at midnight when I'm watching Supercross. But I think for me, it's something where you can either build 5, 6, 7 lineups and hand build. But every time you build a lineup, you're going to see something you wish you could have done, and that's going to upset you. Or you're not going to play the likes of, and I'm going to say some naughty words here, Stenhouse, Dillon, these type guys that if they crack the top 15 can all of a sudden be really good plays. They all have the ability to do it, but they all have the ability to finish 27th. And it's like, which one of these random assholes is going to hit that you don't have because you only play 7 lineups? And so part of me is like, man, I really wish I had 150 shots at this to really spread out and get some coverage on all these guys. And so that's what intrigues me about trying to do the 150 lineups, more so for fun than anything. But yeah, it's just one of those races where I feel like you can go so many different ways, and that makes it fun.
Yeah, if you're playing 8 to 10 lineups, like your what do you think your driver pool would consist of? About how many drivers you think you'd be spreading out with?
Probably about 15 or so. Not too many.
That still seems pretty tight. That's tighter than what I throw out there, man. I'm throwing out like 20, 21 sometimes across, maybe 12 lineups I'm typically playing though.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. I'm going to be a little bit more open on both the dominators on that. So like if I play 10 lineups, I predict to have 6 or 7 potential dominators in that group. And then I'd probably have, between the Jones, Gregson, Barry group and maybe 1 or 2 others that kind of fit that mold. That's another 5. And then I'd probably have 5 cheap guys I'm going to mix and match and kind of piece in there. So I would expect it to kind of be like a 5, 5, and 5. Just depends on where it is. I can see a guy like Bowman sneaking in 1 and 2 lineups, or some random tournament pivots that I'm kind of interested in. So yeah, I'd probably say about 15 guys. It could be 17. It could be 13. But it's just really hard for me to wrap my head around being like having a super tight, group of drivers for this one. So and maybe that's just my worrisomeness, like where I've gotten beat today by stupidity happening at the end where I'm like, oh, cool, I have this slate nailed. We're doing great. And then one guy gets flat tire and your day's done. So maybe that's why I want to spread things out more instead of being super heavy on guys. But I just feel like in the Cup Series now, so many opportunities for so many different guys present themselves, and they all have the ability to hit. So I'm not as comfortable fading certain drivers right now.
Yeah, I think I mean, and to your point, but to me it seems like you can kind of predict the guys at top, right? So you can kind of, be pretty tight with those guys, and like maybe perhaps, the value guys is what I feel like has been unpredictable like this year. Like you don't know who's going to show up. Cosgrello has showed up, before, right? So like you're probably going to have some Cosgrello if you're playing a bunch of lineups, I feel like. But let's start diving into some of the plays, talking about the guys here, right? Let's do it a little different this week. Let's start at the top of the salary pool. Let's work our way down. So let's start the two top guys, right? The guys who's been the talk of the year, Hamlin, Larson, right? Two guys at the top. I will point out, right, going into this week, they've been the dominant cars, the guys you think of right off the bat, but they each have only been optimal once in the last four next gen races here at Darlington. So what do you think? How are you approaching those guys today?
Yeah, so it's a tricky one. So the first and foremost, I've been going through and looking at old ownership trends so far this year, and Larson seeing exorbitant ownership numbers for no reason. Like he's getting 50% ownership. I think he got over 50% last week. And that happened again 2 or 3 races ago, where the field's just playing him at nauseum, and they don't really give a shit about Denny Hamlin. Yeah, Denny Hamlin's the one that's winning the races, right? And so that's very interesting to me. Is that we're seeing in what we'll probably see tomorrow is like 22% Hamlin ownership and like 45 or 50% Larson ownership. So just in that, there's like a lot of ownership leverage and possibilities.
Yeah, Larson's the favorite, right? Larson's the favorite. Like
Larson's been the favorite like every week.
Obviously, but I mean, it's like, but we also come off of Darlington is always off of Kansas too. It's been the spring race, so like it makes sense because Larson's always pretty dominant at Kansas, right? And probably had always like, man, look how fast he was there. Let's see how he's going to be at Darlington, right? And that's always the logic we go into it, and everybody's like, got to play Larson, but he'll be.
Yeah, I mean, Larson's really, really good. I remember the first race here with Next Gen Car, we were all like super heavy on him. He spun out early and then actually had a motor problem later in that race. The one thing I'll say with Larson, and that's why I kind of agree with playing a lot of him, is he has dominated every race for the last 2 months, except for Talladega, which you can't really dominate. It's not a small amount of domination. He is a legit dominator, scoring 25, 30, 35 dominator points in every single race. So it's really hard to get past the fact that he is not just delivering, but delivering at an extremely high rate and putting up really big DFS numbers. And even when he finished 21st, I think it was Texas after he had an issue, he still scored 40 points. He started first, finished 21st, and still scored 40 points because of how many dominator points he had. That's just what he's doing right now. And so it's hard to ignore that. It's hard to ignore that upside. And that's why the field's going to be 50% on him, right? But this track's weird. It's hard to pass the leader. And you got a really good driver in Tyler Reddick starting on pole who's going to be tough to pass in general, who might just have Larson's number outright. Denny Hamlin's fantastic here. He's always been fantastic here. And Hamlin will see half the ownership and might just beat him again, right? We've seen that numerous times just this year. And I'm very interested in what Brett Keselowski and Chris Buescher will have in this race tomorrow because they look really strong. And so I could see a scenario where Larson comes in at 50% ownership, and this is the week he doesn't deliver, not just because he wrecks or has an issue like Chuck Larson has failed to deliver with, but the fact that there's just really stiff competition here and he just doesn't actually deliver the points needed to pay off this price tag. Same for Hamlin, though. I mean, he's super expensive, and that's why people are getting drawn off him, right? They're afraid to put that much salary in him, even though he's delivering on it. So it is tricky. Last thing on those two, Richmond, Hamlin won from like 11th or 12th or whatever and wasn't optimal. And then Larson led from the pole, dominated from the pole, scored the second most points on the slate at Martinsville and wasn't optimal. So the salary situation here does sometimes take these plays off the optimal, even though they do really good in a race. So there is that consideration. There is some viability to be like, I'm not going to play Larson or Hamlin and whatnot. But Larson's car looks really awesome. And I'm kind of into the paint scheme side of things, like just the fact that it could be awesome. And both guys are just firing on all cylinders. They are the two class of the fields right now.
Yeah, it would definitely be sweet to see that old 5 be fast on the track. I will say though, like, I mean, if you're looking at Hamlin and Larson, like, who would you think is more likely to obviously put it up in the wall, right? Who's going to push it too hard and end up in the wall? It's going to be Larson, right? I trust Hamlin to probably bring it home in one piece more often than not. So let's step down and talk about the next man there on the tier, which I think, I mean, he belongs in the same conversation, right? Is Willie B, right? He's been optimal in 3 of 4 next gen era races at Darlington. 2 of 3 times he started inside the top 5. Today he starts 5th, right? So gotta like Willie B, right?
Not really.
No, why?
I'm really not. I think he'll run towards the front all day. And, you know, you look at his track record here and it's good-ish, but he
No
led
one's been
7
better.
laps in the race he won.
The
He led
next
7
gen,
laps in the
have
race he
they?
won. He only won that because Chastain, Larson, and Truex all wrecked out. Like, he wasn't really a factor. He wasn't the guy. And then he had the race where Logano punted him out of the way. I think Byron's a guy that always has a potential to lead, but I don't love what I'm seeing right now. His speed hasn't looked great in recent weeks. He has 2 bad finishes, but even in those, they're not like dominant performances. He's always in play because Hendrick has the best cars right now. There's really 8 true dominator options. If he gets out front, he can smash, but I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's a great track for him versus Reddick versus Larson versus Hamlin versus Keselowski. He's actually really good here. I'll probably keep saying his name a lot. I just think there's 4, 5, 6 guys that I just completely rank ahead of him. And then at this price, if he can't lead 60, 70 laps and finish at the front, he's not going to do well. So I feel good kind of going underweight in taking that chance. But like I told you in the beginning, so much happens here. He won this race last year because so much happens here. And you just never know how this race is going to play out. But he is a contrarian play for me on this slate. I'm not super high on him.
All right. That's good to know. I was coming in staring at him thinking he's a good play. Maybe I'll back off. Maybe
He's not a bad play. It's just 11K. Is he going to lead?
Right.
I don't think he is. If he doesn't, he's a worthless play. So you play him because of that dominator potential, but I'm 10 to 15%. Like, I'm not playing a lot of him because I don't think it happens at a high rate.
How often has he outscored Denny and Larson though?
This year, not very often.
Yeah, right. I mean, but I don't know. I mean, I think he has. Okay.
I mean, Byron's cleared 60 points like once since the Daytona 500. He's not putting up a lot of dominator points. He's not getting a lot of great finishes. It's not like what we're seeing from Hamlin, Larson, where they're just going out there scoring 60, 70 points every week. He's not consistent enough, and quite frankly, they're just better. So I'm just, but he can definitely make it happen for sure. I mean, it's not like I'm comfortable saying, hey, fade one of the best drivers who has like 3 wins this year.
No,
I'm not comfortable with it.
I'm not playing him. I'm not playing him. And then when he fucking dominates, I get to message you and be like, look, whatever. Larkin, like, give me my money back, man.
I suck.
All right, let's move on. Spent a lot of time talking about the top 3 guys. There's obviously a lot more plays to talk about here. Let's talk about. I'll let you talk about your man, Red Dog, starting on the pole. Like, what's not liked about Red Dog here?
Yeah, it's really hard to get my head past. I tried really hard. It's hard not to like him. It's hard not to play a lot of them. Very, very good here at Darlington. I mean, very, very good. He doesn't have the win to show for it, but he's finished top 3 out of 3 of the last 4 races here, right? He led 90 laps in the last race here. He's right on the verge of getting a win here at Darlington. Starting on the pole, where our pole setters with the next gen car have led at least 40 laps. And then I think it was like 67, and then Logano led like 100 and some laps from the pole. Like, the upside of a guy like Reddick, who's damn good at this track, sitting on the pole, is that he leads the entire first stage or leads the entire first 2 stages, pretty much like Truex did last year. And that could be a massive score. So I love the upside. The concern is that Reddick makes mistakes. He's still kind of a up and down guy, right? You see him like at Vegas where he was unbelievable. And then you see him throw races away too. And that's always a concern. So the upside's massive with Reddick. So we love that. But there's also, and the safety net that is, pole sitters here at Darlington typically do really well, especially early. And the concern is that he can crash out or have an issue, or the pit crew is not very good, so he loses the lead on the first stop or things of that nature. And then guy like Keselowski takes over and dominates, or just Larson takes over and dominates. And then, of course, you got Chase Elliott Dominator points out there. And then maybe he's just not optimal. You can see a guy starting on the pole, leading 50 laps, finishing 9th, and not being good enough, right? But on the flip side of that, he's also probably finishing top 5. Like, it's pretty strong shot of that. I think he's going to be able to retain that finishing position and not have a lot of negative place temperature points. So as long as he's not crashing out or having an issue, I think he gets a top 5 finish. I think he's going to be good enough to do that. And then it's really just how many Dominator points does he rack up.
Yeah. And even if he loses the lead, like you said, after 40 or 50 laps, and he's going to run towards the front still and pick up fast laps to the rest of the race, right? He's not just going to stop scoring Dom points then, like you expect some people, who are just playing for the start. Those early lap sled. So yeah, we all love Reddick. Are you going to have more? Who are you going to have more of, do you think, tomorrow? Reddick, Hamlin, or Larson? Yeah,
probably Larson. It just feels the most inevitable. Like it just, and I don't want to get, like, you can go underweight, but I don't think I want to do that. I don't think I want to play that game with the field. It feels a bit like playing chicken, like running out in front of a street full of cars and hoping nothing hits you, because Larson is just so good right now. But so I'll probably be a little bit higher on Larson. I really do like Reddick, though. I think it's a great play. But I can make a lot of reasons why I should get off of him. And that's partly why I think I will be off him more than Larson.
I think those same reasons you could say for Reddick, though, you could say for Larson, though. Like, I think they're the same reasons, but Reddick's going to be lower owned, I feel like, right? I mean,
I don't disagree. I don't disagree, but Larson is delivering at a very high rate right now. It's not like, so like the first 2 years with this car, he did make a lot of mistakes. He did get in the wall. You had like the stuff at Homestead last year when he ran into the barrels on pit road. He was doing that a lot. That's not happening right now. He's getting the finishes he deserves. He's got, throw away Talladega, he's got 4 top 3 finishes out of the last 5 races. He's finishing up front. He's leading a chunk of laps. He's dominating. So it's just really hard for me to not envision him doing that at a track where, well, he's freaking awesome at. And so I'm just really paranoid about the field being 50% and him smashing. And so I'm going to try to cover that as best I can, which will keep me off Reddick some, which will keep me off Hamlin some, which will keep me off the other guys in this range. So I just think Larson will have the bigger number.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see if I can get you on this next guy, right? Like, I like, you poo-pooed Byron. So let's see if you poo-poo Martin Truex Jr., right? Like, I mean, this guy steps up here starting 10th. I know he's had terrible finishes in the next gen era, obviously. Like, you look at his finishes, they do not look good, which is why I don't think anybody's going to play him. We're going to get him at hardly any ownership with all these other guys you talked about. Guy has most fast laps in the next gen era, though, at Darlington, and the second most laps led here. And we know he's one of the best at high tire wear tracks. He had a stinker in the fall, right? Because his fall, what was he? For whatever reason, he had a stinker here in the fall. But he's been lights out the 3 races prior. I mean, tell me why you don't want to be overweight on Martin Truex today.
Level of competition around them is probably the biggest thing. The 3 guys we already talked about, plus Keselowski, plus other ones. Hey, I said Keselowski again.
Like, you can't wait to talk about Keselowski.
You know it. So Truex is fine. I think he's a better play for like FanDuel, where you get rewarded by a guy like this finishing 4th. My issue with him is that
most fast laps, man. Like, he's scoring points.
I want the context on that. So last year, he sat on the pole here and led the whole first 145 laps or whatever. The second he got in traffic, he was not as quick. He had handling issues, and they were evident. And then Chastain and Larson started screwing with each other and wrecked each other, and it kind of brought Truex back into it. And it was starting to give him a chance on those restarts, and then he got collected in the wreck. His speed was good, but the second he got in traffic, I saw signs of issues, and then he did put up a stinker in the fall. So I think the last 2, the race last spring was a bit of a, like, you got this big false hope that he was really that dominant, when in reality he just had the track position. I think if he had been 7th, he would have just ran 7th all day instead of being a great car last year. And then he did have that stinker. It's not so much about him not being a great play. It's more about Larson, Hamlin, and Reddick being great plays. And so I don't mind Truex as a secondary option for a dominator play. Like, I don't mind pivoting to him. I think that's a fine play. I think he'll run top 10. I think he'll get some fast laps because he's great in the long run. I don't think the play hurts you. I'm chasing that guy that's going to score me 75, 80 points, and I don't see that happening at a high rate. But you're right. The fast lap thing exists because he's fantastic on the long run. He's the guy that makes his tires last the longest. He's the guy that starts clicking them off 30 laps in a run. And all of a sudden you look at Martin Truex and they're like, holy shit, he's got 40 fast laps. That's totally plausible. And so for that reason, he's in play. It's just not a guy that I'm like, yes, I got to have Martin Truex. I want to shove him in because I don't think he's one of the top 3 or 4 guys. I don't want to be 35, 40% on Truex. And it's fine. Like Byron, I'm fine with the play. I can see it working. I'm just not seeing him optimal right now. It's not in my clear view. It's more of like, if things break his way, he hits. I think the fact that he starts 10th is a good spot. It gives him a little place differential equity, and it also kind of limits his floor. Whereas like Reddick, I'm like, holy crap, if Reddick just finishes 7th, he could be a bad play. Truex, I feel like, yeah, okay, maybe he only scores me 45, 50 points, but that's not going to kill me. And then you're chasing the upside. So I kind of like it, but I'm not feeling it. And I could be wrong. He may just drive straight to the front. I just don't think it's the week for him.
All right. Who would you like better if you had to choose between Truex and Willie B? As a pivot? Okay.
Truex.
All right, let's next guy here, Chase Elliott, right? I mean, how do we not love Chase Elliott coming in here, starting 31st at this price tag, right? I mean, been optimal 2 of the last 4 here at Darlington. I will say both those races that he was optimal. He started 21st in this race last year, and he started 34th in this race 2 years ago. So he tends to have a terrible time qualifying in the spring and has been optimal in the last 2 races. So gotta love Chase Elliott, right?
Yeah, big fan of this play. I mean, he's pretty much a top 10 guy every race here. The only times he really hasn't been was like when Kyle Busch turned him on the front stretch and weird stuff happened. So I think it was 2020, Kyle Busch turned him on the front stretch, and then 2021, him and Truex, I think, wrecked for the lead. So he's had 2 basically race-winning cars or top 3 cars wrecked here. And then aside from that, he's finishing 5th, 7th, 8th, 3rd. Like, he's pretty much delivering what you expect from when you factor in the place differential points he has. It's an obvious play. He pretty much has a floor of like 55 points, and then the upside's somewhere around 70, 75. So I really do like that play. I think it's a guy that has all the potential to go up there and even win this race. It's such a good track for him. And then the fact that he just had that built-in place differential equity, it's awesome. This was the driver I was talking about when it gets hard to build lineups, though. When you play like Reddick and Larson, let's say you're playing those 2 as your 2 main dominators, and you try to put in Chase Elliott, it forces you to do something you don't want to do. You have to get off of Gragson. You have to get off of Barry. You have to get off those other place differential plays. So you're forced into playing someone from that like Stenhouse group or Austin Dillon or even lower Priest. Like Priest feels so ugly after the last 2 weeks, but you might have to play him in the spot. And so if you're playing those obvious plays, if you're paying up in salary, you're forced to sacrifice elsewhere, or you can get off Chase Elliott and play Gragson and Barry and hope those 2 deliver good place differential scores. So this is kind of where the slate starts to be affected, is because Chase Elliott's going to be 45 or 50% owned. He's got the floor. He's got good upside, but who are you going to sacrifice? Are you going to sacrifice in the Chase Elliott lineup where you're playing someone really crappy next to him, or are you going to get off of him, or are you going to get off Reddick, or are you going to get off someone up there to be able to afford the safer plays like Gragson? And that's where you can start playing with that balance. I really like Chase Elliott as a floor play. He's a cash lock. But when you're trying to chase that optimal, it's like we talked about Larson and Hamlin not being optimal with those good performances at Richmond and Martinsville. Well, one of these guys still score well. Will they score 65 points and not be optimal because of the salary restrictions, because of 2 other drivers? So it's really just like, who's our dominators? How much do they score? And how do they affect the rest of it? And will that get us on the plays we want to be on? Or do we have to take a chance with Daniel freaking Suarez and hope that he finishes top?
No. We're not going to stand Suarez, right? What I haven't started building lineups yet, but like the way I'm looking at it, at least right now, like give me all of 45% on Chase Elliott. Like, is it like I'm looking at where I want to pivot off of Kyle Larson for Chase Elliott. Like, make Chase Elliott be my pivot off Larson, and then I can play a bunch of Reddick. I could play guys like Hamlin. I could go be heavy on Truex, and knowing that it's going to be hard for guys to play Larson, Chase, and those other guys like you mentioned, right? So they got all the other Chase Elliott lineups with Larson aren't going to have Reddick or Hamlin. So I just need Hamlin, Reddick, or somebody to beat Larson, and I'm ahead of all those Larson lineups.
Yeah, two things I want to throw in there. Chase Elliott's wrecked in 4 of his last 8 races here, 50% of the time. And this kind of goes to that Darlington, I don't want to say craziness, but it's called the track too tough to tame for a reason, right? It strikes out and bites people. There is a higher crash rate. So it's really important that you keep that in mind and not go too heavy on this play. But that can also affect Kyle Larson, Hamlin, all those other plays, right? I agree with you. Like if Reddick just goes out there and smashes and you don't play Larson or you don't play Hamlin and you drop down to another driver, Brett Keselowski, and you save some of that salary and then you get the safe play with Elliott, you can do other things. And that frees up the salary. And this is what I'm talking about. The slate can go so many different ways. You can come off those top tier guys, get a dominator like Keselowski or Chastain, who's done really good here, or some other guys, Truex if you want. And that frees up the salary for those place average guys that you really want on the lower end. So I do think there's a lot of options. I think Chase is a really good safe play. I do wonder, like, if 2 drivers lead 100+ laps and finish top 5, is he even a factor for the optimal lineup, though? So it just depends on who those guys are.
I mean, he's been optimal to both. Like I said, I just went through. He was optimal both times.
Yeah.
And last time when he was optimal 2 years ago, when he started 34th, right? When he was optimal in that race, he's $800 cheaper this race than he was in that race. So I mean, I'm saying give it to me. Well, let's move on. I skipped over Christopher Bell. Do we need to talk about Christopher Bell at all?
Bell's fine. He's just not great here. It's not like a very good track for him. So if he were to perform, lead a bunch of laps, something, it would be abnormal. It's not something we expect. So I don't really like the play. Another guy that could be really good on FanDuel, where it's like, oh, Christopher Bell finished 3rd or 4th. And you're like, wow, that's a good score over there, where the fast laps and dominator points that you need from DraftKings, I don't think he's great on that slate. I don't really want to play him. Same thing goes for Kyle Busch. I'm not really into Kyle Busch. I think Kyle could finish top 5. 9.4K kind of brings him in because it's not super expensive. But he's not getting the finishes, right? He's just not finishing that high. Even his best days, he's scoring like 55 points, but most of the time he's kind of struggling to get the results. And there's a lot of weirdness there. I think he'll run all right. I think he'll contend for top 10. But to score 60 points and challenge these other guys, I don't think so. So Kyle's secondary target, Bell's secondary target. You're kind of just sprinkling them in for the what ifs. They're going to run fine. They're going to be quick enough, but just not to get to the race leading potential or anything like that. I think there are guys that like finish 7th, and you're like, okay, they score 45 points.
All right. Well, I heard you. So we talked about Kyle. We talked about Christopher Bell. I heard you skipped over my boy Ross Chastain. That's another one, in my opinion. He's been really fast here. Again, you look at his finishes. His finishes haven't been great. He hasn't really got it to the end, but at least, in the next gen era, but second most fast laps in the next gen era. We saw his talent. He got the win in the truck race. This is where he made his debut, right? We had that big breakout performance, in the 42 car. So, I mean, I think that Ross Chastain makes a nice, decent pivot as a guy who can probably get some fast laps as well. What do you think?
Yeah. So Ross is probably the most interesting scary threat in this range. I don't want to play him. I don't think he's going to be good, but God, I want him to be good. And that fear of what he's done speed wise here is still there. So like you said, he's wrecked here a lot. He's wrecked 3 of the last 4 races. Essentially, he's not been great. He got a top 5 last race here. He led 93 laps in the spring race here last year. Finished 3rd here with the old car in the September race of 2021. He's definitely really good at this track. His ability,
the track he likes, right? He likes this track. He races
he loves
track
it.
as he can, right?
He loves it. He's great on restarts, which is super advantageous here. He's a guy that can put his car in a spot to pass people. He just takes advantage of people on restarts, right? And that 2 spots every restart. And by the way, no one passes him, right?
Yeah, you saw what happens if he gets the lead, like last week, right? I mean,
a
couple weeks, you can't pass him if he gets the lead. It's gonna be tough to pass.
Ryan Blaney had a quote, and I don't know it exactly, but essentially he was like, "You arrow block here like crazy." He's like, it's really hard to play this Darlington race like you used to, where you wait on guys who wear out tires and you wait on all those things. Like, it's just a blocking game. Well, who's the best at blocking? Ross Chastain. Like, this track right now fits his driving style. Great on restarts, great at holding position. You know, he does have good pure pace as well, and it's just kind of the perfect blend for him. With that said, it's like, how often do I think he actually leads over Larson, Reddick, and those guys? And so on one hand, I'm like, I don't really want to play him, but on the other hand, I'm like, just like last week, I'm like, maybe he does lead though, and if he does, he can be a great play. I know we talked about that last week where I was like, Ross Chastain starts second. That's a red flag. Like, if he starts second, he's probably going to be really good, and he was until, well, he wasn't, but he led 43 laps in that race, and the second he gets out front, he has the ability to make that work. And I do think it's a good track for him. So I like him as a secondary option. I think there's a very good chance that he's contending for in the top 5 at some point, but I also think there's opportunity for him to find the wall and not finish top 5. Considering he has one top 5 finish on the year, it's really easy for me to say that. He hasn't been very good this year in terms of finishing equity. He's honestly not been that fast, but in just little spurts. So I kind of feel good being off of him, even though I'm afraid of him hitting. And from a fan standpoint, if he hits, I just be like, cool, Ross Chastain won. That's awesome. And I could root for him. But as far as DFS, I'm not saying bad play. Sort of like Truex, I'm like, this could work, but it's a secondary option I don't want to be too heavy on.
It's all right. If you don't want, we love crossing guys off the list, Mark, and I like it. It makes our job a lot easier when you cross guys off the list. Have we broke 500? Yeah, but that's why you make the big bucks, man. Why have we hit 500 subscribers yet?
What's that?
Have we hit 500 subscribers yet?
Yeah, earlier. Yeah, they messaged it. I put it up on the screen.
Oh,
see?
Now
we're at 500. Woo!
Woo! God dang it, I missed it. I didn't celebrate. I have it blocked over with my notes over my face, so I didn't see it. I apologize.
It's all right. No worries. Yeah, we get to 500. Thank you, everyone who subscribed.
Yeah.
You know, I was looking at our this is gonna be a long podcast, by the way. So if everyone doesn't make it, whatever. Sorry guys, but I was looking at our stuff from last year that we did on like Thursdays or whatever, and the amount of viewers we have for these shows versus that is like ridiculously more. So that's really cool. So thank you everyone who watches, and then to see the subscriber number grow to like 500's a very small number compared to like Mr. Beast, who I've been watching a lot of videos of this week. But for us, it's really cool. Like 500 is a cool number. It's a nice round number. And so I'm very thankful for the 500 people that subscribe to us. I'd like to get to 1,000 next. So that's our next goal. So for those that aren't subscribed and you're watching right now, click the button.
There you go. Yeah, 500 doesn't seem like a lot, right? But if you think of 500 people in a room, it's a lot more, right? When you think about that. So don't.
Yeah, I want to wear a mask.
It's something proud of. So let's go. Let's move on. I had here on my next part on the notes, we can kind of skip down a little bit, is what the fuck are we going to do with the Fords, right? As they showed up fast in practice, are we buying? It sounds to me, right, that you're kind of buying into what we saw in practice, at least with the Brad Keselowski and Chris Buescher, right?
Brad Keselowski? Did you say Brad Keselowski?
Yeah, you can talk about him. You've been waiting. Let's talk about him.
All right. Here we go. Okay. Remember what I said last week about Matt Kenseth qualifying on the front row and qualifying up front? And it was like, that was an obvious sign that he's really, really good. And then I talked about Ross Chastain. And I was like, hey, he qualified on the front row. That's kind of odd. Why did he do that? And then he led 43 laps. Brad Keselowski's like 10 times that. Like, Brad Keselowski hasn't qualified well his entire life unless the car is really damn fast. That's the first sign to me that Brad Keselowski has a good car. The second thing is his teammate starts third. So it's not an anomaly. Both cars have speed. It's legit. When you look at Brad Keselowski's long run speed in practice, he was like 18th in 10 lap average. He was third in 20 lap average. He was making up time. His fall off from lap 10 to 20 is less than everyone else in the field. His long run speed is going to be very, very good. And that's because Brad Keselowski is really, really good at long run speed. He's also very, very good at Darlington. Very good at Darlington and sneakily good at Darlington. So I'm very high in this play. Now, completely risky. It's a guy starting second, right?
He's not cheap either. He's 9,200, right? So he's got to score, right?
But think about this. if he leads at any point, he's probably going to lead 50 laps, right? Because once you get the lead here, you're putting up a pretty big chunk of laps led. The other side of this, if his car is legit and he's always good on a long run, how many fast laps is he going to rack up? And this is a guy that I think will finish top 5. Like, I feel very strongly if he has a clean race, it's a top 5 finish. And I think he's going to crack a bunch of fast laps. So I think he's a guy that can score 55, 60 points, even if he doesn't lead a lap. And when I have a guy like that that has that kind of potential, sure, maybe he finishes 12th and just it sucks because Darlington's weird and weird things happen. Especially the track position here is super important. But all the signs point towards Brad Keselowski being great in this race. Single lap speed, great. Long run speed in practice, great. Teammate speed, great. It's hard to get off of him, especially when this is such a good track for him. And so I think this is a fantastic tournament option. It's a guy that you can instantly pivot to from Reddick to save some salary. You can use him off of Larson and Hamlin if you want and just say, okay, I don't think Larson is going to be a 70-point score. I think I'm going to be able to kind of match that score with Keselowski. And even if Larson outscores him by 10 points, maybe the salary savings of $2,000 is going to allow me to play someone better in my lineup and make up that difference. Anyways, I think Keselowski opens up a lot of things. And 9.2K, while it is expensive, if you pair it with the right 2 top-tier guys that also hit, and he scores 55, 60 points, it's going to work out. It's kind of like what you're reading off with Chase Elliott's optimal, scores being place differential plays, right? It's like, dude, give me those 65 points, 60 points, and you're probably on the optimal. I think this is a spot where Keselowski can do it. And so I really like that. I think this is going to be a great day for him. I'm fully ready for this to blow up in my face, but I do not want to ignore the speed the entire team has shown and the long run speed he showed in practice. If it was just one thing, if he was 15th in practice and his teammate was bad but he qualified second, I'd be like, whoa, that's weird. But everything suggesting that both cars are just really damn fast. And so for me, that is something I want to attack.
How owned do you think Kez is going to be?
What's that?
How owned do you think Keselowski is this?
Probably 20%. I don't think it'll be super heavy. I think Larson will take precedent, obviously. And I think Reddick will be picked over Keselowski straight up. And I think Elliott eats a lot of ownership. So I don't think Keselowski is going to see a ton. But I do think a lot of people are going to be like, okay, he was fast in practice. His car's fast. Buscher's fast. Okay, we're going to work him in. So I think 20%, I can see it slightly under or slightly more. But 9.2K is not super hard to get in. Like, you can afford that with 2 top-tier guys. Like, if you play Keselowski over Elliott, you save 600, and that gets you Josh Berry. So it's not that hard to make that call. So I do think there's a chance that Keselowski comes in higher just because of all those scenarios. But Keselowski doesn't typically see a lot of ownership unless he's starting in the back, unless he's a place differential play, right? We haven't seen him be a dominator guy in 3-4 years. So it's really hard to see people trusting him in that mindset. So I do think the ownership will be lower than it probably should be a little.
Yeah, I think most of the ownership there is probably going to go to Buescher, right? At least in my opinion, when I look at these two guys, like, I want, but more Buescher than likely Kez, right? Because Buescher's cheaper. And to me, like, right now at this point in their career, like, Buescher seems like a better driver than Keselowski at this point in their career, right? I mean, he's definitely been outperforming him. I mean, obviously, if they're both fast, like, I trust Buescher over Keselowski at least at this point, especially for the price difference, right? You don't need Buescher to really do as much as you need Kez to do to pay off that price tag. So what are you doing with those two guys? Are you playing them together?
I don't think you like Buescher. So Indy Hoosier asked this question. Can you play them together in the same lineup? You can, because Buescher's so damn cheap. I don't understand the price there. I didn't look at odds earlier in the year or early in the week because I just don't really care. But like, was Chris Buescher really like the 18th best odds to win this race? Like, he almost won last week at a similar track type. Like, 7.8K is completely disrespectful. So yeah, just on the pricing alone, he becomes a good play, right? Now, Gregson and Berry and Jones are going to be really popular in that range. So it's hard to see playing Buescher over them because they have all the place differential upside. But there's an opportunity for Buescher to do exactly what I said about Keselowski, to go out there, get 20, 30 fast laps, to finish top 3, to have a great race, or even lead. So Buescher does have viability. He does have the ability to match or outscore those guys. So I think he's a fine play too. If Kez and Buescher just have the best two cars, like if they just showed up and they're that good, no reason to think that they both can't put up 60 points and both do really well. It is hard to play the second and third place guys in the same lineup. It's hard to play the first and second guys, but at least, you know, like the first place guy has the potential to lead the first 50, 60 laps. And then if he gives up the lead, it's okay. Whereas you need both of these guys to probably get to the lead at some point. Maybe not with Buescher because of the price, but you need them both to basically hit their upsides. And that's really hard when they don't have the obvious clear path to lead and things of that nature. But they both are really, really good plays. I think the speed's obvious. And whenever the speed's this obvious, I don't want to ignore it. So I do like playing a decent amount of both. I think Buescher will see a decent amount of ownership because the price is just asinine. So that's going to help him for sure. But yeah, both are really good. I'm excited to watch them. Like, this is the first time in a long time I've been really excited to watch two drivers. One, because I really like them. Like, I'm a fan of both. And so, like, I want them to do well. I want them both to win. Like, I'd be really happy to see either one of them win. So I'm going to be rooting for them tomorrow. So just from that aspect, like, I'm excited to watch them race. But I also need to keep that. I probably need to check my positivity a little bit and realize that they start second and third, and simply falling outside the top 8 can kill them and kill lineups. So they could be dangerous plays, even though I'm very high on them.
Yeah, they got to run top 5, finish top 5, right? So anytime you got to like nail 3 of the 4 top 5, right, that's gonna get your odds to you know, get those become a little bit tougher. But yeah, obviously we all love Chris Buescher. I mean, we saw the speed that they brought last week. It seems like that team found something. Finished third here last time we were at Darlington. So I know we skipped over a few guys. Do we need to talk about Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, Ty Gibbs, Bubba Wallace, Alex Bowman? Any of those guys we need to talk about?
Probably a little bit. So Blaney, I'm not really interested. He doesn't have a great track record here, but I made the analogy. I think it was Martinsville where Reddick started like 19th or 20th, and he ended up 7th just through happenstance. And he ended up being on the winning lineup or maybe on the optimal just because things worked out in his favor. And I think Ryan Blaney fits into that mold. Like, he's not great here. He's got a couple of 9th place finishes the last 2 races, but before that, it's just like 17th and 16th, and he's just kind of mediocre. He's not great on high tire wear tracks. So it's easy for me to write him off. But if all of a sudden he's 6th or 7th at the end of this race and like Chase Elliott hits the wall, Blaney could be the 3rd best scorer or kind of fit that mold, and that could work out. Logano, same thing. Like, I think he could finish 7th. I don't think he is optimal with the 7th place finish, so I don't really like it. But Logano's got the best average finish over the last 6 races here. He's really good at this track, so I think it's plausible that he sneaks in the top 5. So he's technically playable, although I don't really like him. Gibbs, not interested in. I think he drops in the field. Wallace is very interesting because he's finished 8th or better in the last 3 races. I think he's going to have a quick car if he can kind of – or sorry, it was 9th.
Yeah.
So
get it right.
Sorry.
Dang
same race.
Man,
but, you know,
professionals here. You're a professional.
Whatever. This race last year, he was hunting Martin Truex for the lead early. Like, he was looking really, really good early in that race, ended up 5th. I think it's possible that he has a similar type performance where he's running 4th, 5th, clicked off some fast laps, and he's only 8,200. So I don't mind him as a turn and play. And then Bowman is similar to Blaney. He doesn't have a great track record here. It's not like you look at Alex Bowman's results here and you're like, oh, wow, yeah, okay, he has a lot of top 10 equity. He doesn't really have that at all. You know, he has 1/10th place finish here in this race in 2022. I forgot he missed this race last year with his back injury, but before that, it's not like great. But the one thing he has going for him is the fact that the Hendrick cars just have a little bit more speed on the entire field, whereas in 2022 that wasn't the case. Things were a lot more spread out. That's a big positive, and he's also in good form. Like, he's running top 10 most weeks. So I think there's the potential for him just to have a 10th place car, a 9th place car, be good. And starting 18th, finishing 9th, few fast laps at 8K, I can see that working out. So I don't mind the play. Again, it's similar to Reddick ilk, where it's like, wow, if he finishes 7th, 8th, oh well. Like, he could hit. I don't like to play on paper, but man, he's running top 10 every week.
Yeah, that range was a range when I got to it and looked, and I just kind of like, bah, nobody interests me. But normally, like, in history will tell you that, like, when I do that, that means somebody in that range is probably going to smash, right?
So, and that's the thing I was telling you about. It's like, it's so easy to look at like 6 or 7 guys and be like, wow, those are the best plays. I love it. Yeah. Darlington eats teams up. teams make mistakes, whatever. And all of a sudden you're like, I don't want to play Bowman. And then he's finishing freaking 7th because HMS just has the best cars. And so I feel like there's a lot of guys, and we're going to get some more of those where, yeah, you don't like them, but they can all hit and they all have the potential to work on the slate, especially on this slate specifically. And so I think this is where it starts to get interesting. A guy like Bowman, where it's like, I don't really want to play him. Jones, Gregson look way better. But dude, what if he just scores 50 points and the rest of them don't? And so there's definitely potential there. But let's get into the key plays of the slate. I think there's 3 of them that we got to focus on.
Let's sneak in a quick viewer question here. What about Larson, Bell, Reddick, and same lineup? You start with that at all?
I think it's fine. I mean, Bell's not really someone I'm super interested in, so I'm not like being like, yeah, let's go out there and do that. But if you want to get some Bell ownership and you want to play that, yeah, I mean that works. You're probably gonna have to sacrifice somewhere just because of the pricing. I mean, Bell's more expensive than Elliott, so you're basically saying that you're gonna get 65 or 70 points from all 3 of these guys, and they all start inside the top 12.
Don't play Bell, Rick. I'll say it. Don't do it. Don't do it, Rick. I'll say it. Put in Chase over Bell.
Chase over. Probably not wise because you're already having a hard time. Like if you go ahead and punch in Larson, Reddick, and Elliott, which will be popular, you got to sacrifice somewhere. Well, paying up for Bell even more than Elliott is only going to make that worse. So, it's probably not the best.
And how are you going to get Dom points at all 3 of those guys anyway to pay off? Like, come on, you can't. Don't do it.
Jason's a lot more straightforward. Yeah, you could just not do it.
You got to be straightforward.
All right. Dude, every time I'm straightforward, I feel like he's just gonna bite me in the ass. So
then you're wrong, and we'll be wrong together. It's all right.
God dang, you're still being straightforward. My feeling.
All right, let's get to those obvious chalk plays you were talking about. Right, the big plays on the slate. Right, that we need to be aware of. Jones, right, Gregson. Jones, obviously, right, top 10, 2 of the last 4 here with a win in the next gen era. Right, yeah. They've obviously had this race circled on the schedule. Also, it seems like a great track for Gregson. How are you handling these 2 here?
This is tough. So, with Jones, I'm nervous about guys who have to take time out of the car when they get injured. When like Bowman and Elliott and guys like that. When they miss time, it's like they come back and they're just off the pace. Like they're struggling. And Jones, who's already kind of having a mediocre year, who was struggling to get the top 15 finishes, I thought he would, is now coming in, and I'm kind of worried about it. But he's also this is the best track that he could have come into because he's great here. 30th is a great position for him. He's obviously got top 15 potential, so it's a lot of place average points. My 2 concerns here are salary. 7,500 doesn't feel like a lot, but it can be. When you're trying to pay up for those top guys. I'm having a hard time getting Gregson in the lineups, let alone Jones. So I'm a little worried about the 7,500 price tag. Now, if I'm paying off of Elliott to Jones, that's going to free stuff up, but you're also getting off Elliott, which is tough to kind of stomach. They start right next to each other, 30th, 31st. If Elliott only gets the 15th and Jones gets to like 17th, Jones is the better play. Or even if Jones gets the 14th and Chase gets the 10th, Jones might still be the better play because it opened up the salary and got you the hell off of Harrison Burton. So I do think there's viability in Jones, but more as a pivot off of the more obvious plays that cost more. Whereas Gregson, because he starts 36, because he's going to be so massively owned, that's an absolute lock in cash. He was really fast in practice. He's running top 10 every week. Like, it's legit top 10 speed out of him nearly every week, and it's super impressive. You kind of have to play him. Now, what happens if he wrecks? He's going to be 45, 50% owned. Like, he's going to see a ton of ownership. So if he wrecks, you can kind of leverage that. But I'm prioritizing Gregson. I get to save $300 over Jones, which helps. But both are great plays. If you end up with both on the lineup, that's fine. If you use some Jones as a pivot off of Gregson, that's good too. That's smart. And then Josh Berry is the cheaper version of these guys, right? He's 6,700, so he is 800 cheaper than Jones, which is a decent amount. Very good in practice. High tire wear tracks. I like Berry because of his short track, tire management style that he comes with. So I think Berry's a guy that can finish top 20. 20th place is going to be probably good enough to score well on a slate like this. That's 37 points. So 20th, 37 points is good. If he gets up around 15th, that's a great score. I think you're going to end up on Barry a little bit more because of salary. Like there's going to be times where you just want to get to Gregson and you can't, or you want to get to Jones and you can't. So you just settle for Barry. That's fine. The one issue I have with Barry is just that he's not as good as Gregson, right? Like we've seen Gregson run up front most of the year. I can see Barry just running 22nd and not delivering the score you need. But all three of those are great options. And then they're surrounded by guys like Suarez, Briscoe, and Stenhouse and McDowell that you don't want to play. Like you see those three and you're like, that's who I want to play. I want to play the place differential. And that gets you off of Suarez, that gets you off Stenhouse when those may be the guys that actually finish top 10. And so that's where this kind of gets fun is you can maybe pivot off of Gregson and go to Ricky Stenhouse, who, yes, wrecks a lot. Yes, he's scary. But when he's on, he has top 10 potential. We saw it at Dover. Before he spun out, he was a top 10 car the entire race at Dover. And that's on legit speed. Here at Darlington, we've seen great performances from him. And, he finished 8th in May of 2022. He finished 16th and 13th here last year. And I'm just sitting there like, Ricky Stenhouse, man, if he sneaks in the top 10 and I save the salary off Gregson, that's how it can be different. And that's what will happen when Gregson wrecks out. It's a guy like Stenhouse that hits. And this is where everything starts to get weird because I want to start attacking these secondary guys, the riskier plays, because one of them is probably going to hit and one of them is probably going to be optimal. It just depends on who it's going to be. And so Briscoe looks ugly. Suarez looks ugly. Stenhouse looks ugly. McDowell looks ugly. They all look ugly. Yeah. But then you start realizing
the Ricky call. I actually like the Ricky call there. I mean, if you look at him, he has been really good at Darlington. And if you look at like last year when we got to this point in the schedule last year, like this was a really good stretch for Ricky Stenhouse. Your Kansas, your Dover, your Darlington. It was a really good stretch in the year where he had some, top 16, top 15, top 13 finishes, right? In those races. And we saw the same thing, right? Dover, he was running really well, top 12 before he wrecked out of that race, right? Kansas last week, 16th. I mean, I think it sets up to see a good, solid top 16, top 15 run out of Stenhouse here. And like you mentioned, not all three of those big chalk guys you mentioned are going to pay off, right? Somebody's going to have trouble. Somebody's going to wreck out. You're going to have to pivot. And I like the Stenhouse there. But I know, are you going to talk about your other love child there, Austin Dillon? I'm sure you're about to talk about him. How you think about that?
I just want to touch on Michael McDowell real quick. Just to kind of capstone those four guys, McDowell finished 6th and 7th here in 2022. He wrecked out of both races last year, but he started 9th in this fall race or summer race. I don't know what September is really, but I guess technically summer. He started 9th. They've had good speed here. Gilliland's had good speed here. I don't think it's implausible that McDowell finishes top 10. Now, I don't project that to happen. I'm not picking him, but all these guys have the ability here, especially at a track like Darlington, where it is more driver and setup specific, where tire management and just having, a good car kind of matters more than just pure pace. And so if one of these guys can end up having a good run, I wouldn't be surprised. I do think Stenhouse is my favorite of that group. Next up's kind of a group. When I did my breakdown, I paired them all together. So basically Austin Dillon all the way down to Zane Smith, really, if you want to. But I did Austin Dillon, the host bar. And basically this entire group are drivers that I think could finish 16th, could finish 17th, could even finish 13th and be amazing plays. Or they can finish 30th. And the issue I had when I was doing projections is the fact that somebody has to run 27th, 28th, and 29th, right? Somebody has to. I don't think it's going to be Chase Elliott and Noah Gragson. So who's it going to be? And when I'm thinking about these guys, I'm thinking, I like Ryan Preece, but he might just run 24th. I like Austin Dillon at high tire wear tracks, but he's been dog shit this year. And so I'm sitting there trying to think about, I do like Dillon. I do like Cindric. I do like Preece, but they've all been bad. And so it's so easy to write them off because of the performance this year. It's so easy to write them off because of what they deliver. But 6,200 for Cindric, 18th place scores really well. 18th place scores really well. And he's done really well here at Darlington. He was quick in practice, really good speed at practice. Austin Cindric, 19th, 16th, and 18th in 3 of the last 4 races. You give me 18th right now, I'm playing Austin Cindric. I'm just going to lock him. I don't know if it's awesome.
I ain't going to play Austin Cindric for 5,200.
And that's the feeling most people are going to have. Most people are going to be like, I don't want to play him. But when you're playing Reddick, Larson, and Elliott together, or you're trying to play those top tier guys, you have to do it. You absolutely have to play one of these guys. You're
I'll
forced
play
into
Nemechek or Hosafar. Like,
That's
I don't
fine.
I don't want no Dylan. I don't want no Cindric, no Priest. Those no driving. I don't want them non-driving. So give me some guys who can drive. Give me Carson Hosafar, a guy who can wheel the car. Give me a guy like John Hunter Nemechek. Give me some guys who got some fire still. Give me those guys, and you can keep your
I'm fine with that. That's fine. They also start 21st and 22nd, so they offer less place differential potential. They have worse floors, and if they have an issue, they're going to hurt you a lot more than Ryan Priest starting.
They'll both hurt. They'll all hurt you if they have an issue. Austin Cindric having an issue.
Yes, they'll all hurt you. But I feel like Ryan Priest just finished his 27th, and you're like, oh, Ryan Priest sucks. I feel like Carson Hosafar is the type of guy that puts it in the wall, or he finishes 17th. So, yes, the upside's there, but he's also probably riskier than most. And then I want to cover Austin Dillon because, God, he was so good here until last year. So good here. He had 11 straight top 20 finishes. Aside from a 20th, 17th was the worst finish in that span. He had a 9th, a 10th, a 2nd, a 4th. Like, he's so good here, but he's so bad right now. And so I think there's a world where we look back at this race and we're like, man, Austin Dillon was a good play. We should have been on him because it's Darlington and because of high tire wear. So I want to say play some of him, even though you might not like it. I think he's the guy that you want to sprinkle in. I think he's probably the best of the group. Austin Cindric. So I want to talk about this here. Lap averages can be a lie. Fast laps can be a lie in practice. The first group in practice were at a big advantage, fresher track. And then you also got guys that are veterans that aren't going to go out there and lay down fast laps early in a run. They aren't going to do things to tear up the tires. They're going to make sure they're good on the long run. Brad Keselowski is a great example of that, right? 18th and 10 lap average, 3rd and 20 lap average. All of a sudden, it's like things like that. Whereas Austin Cindric, pedal to the metal, drive out great. You have a good early lap time because of fresh track and everything. I don't think that speed's real. I don't think he's a legit top 10 speed guy. I think what you're hoping from Cindric is that you're getting a 19th place finish, 18th place finish, which he's done 3 out of 4 races here. So I do think Cindric's a fine play. I think Dillon has some upside. I think all these guys have the potential. And the fact that you're going to be forced into playing them, just pick who you like. Like, if you don't like Cindric, if you don't like Priest, but you want Hosafar and Nemechek, do that, right? Whoever, not you particular, but anyone else that's listening, play who you like. Play the drivers you want to be on, and that's probably the best bet. Go with your gut, so to speak. But I do think Dillon and Cindric are really good plays for the price. You're going to be in this range when you're trying to force stuff in. You can't afford Barry. You're going to end up here. And so that's why I wanted to highlight that group of 5. I think one of them, if not 2 of them, are finishing like 15th to 18th and scoring well. And then I think 3 of them are probably complete busts and they're finishing 30th. And you're like, why the hell did I play them? Ryan's an asshole. Yeah. So it's a tough group, but I do think there's a chance that 1 or 2 of those guys are really important.
Yeah, I'll give you Dillon over Cindric and Priest. I'd play Dillon before I play those.
That's fair.
Pieces of trash. All right, let's go to. We got to. Hopefully, we don't spend much time talking about Corey LaJoie and Zane Smith. Nothing to me jumps out.
LaJoie's been bad here. Zane Smith's been pretty mediocre. Yeah. I'm not super high on him. Pricing. Pricing works. I mean, that's the reason.
So just pricing is all, but that's about it. Just guy to sprinkle in, right? What about Todd? You gotta love Todd Gilliland if you like Austin Cindric, right? You gotta love Todd Gilliland. He's fast.
Yes. I do.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm picking up an echo of myself. I don't know how that started, but I was looking at Todd Gilliland, and initially I was like, "Ooh, Todd Gilliland starting 15th." I'm not sure, and then I was like, "Wait a minute, he's actually been really good here." He was 11th in this race last year, 15th in this race in 2022. He was really strong in practice. I think the car's legitimately quick. I actually rate Todd Gilliland as a driver. I think he's actually pretty decent. And when I'm thinking about the rest of this group, I'm like, Harrison Burton scores me 20 points. Justin Haley scores me 20 points. I'm like, maybe I just play Todd Gilliland and he scores me 28. Right? Like, I think that's possible.
8% owned too, man. If he sneaks into a top 10, he's going to make so much money. Like, I mean, I wouldn't say don't go 30% Todd Gilliland. You ain't got to go too heavy, but just sprinkle in some Todd, man. He could pay off.
I don't mind that. I don't mind the play. I think a top 15 is a realistic outcome for him. I think likely he's finishing 18th to 20th.
Finished
But
11th
one
in the
thing I do
spring
like
last
about
year.
this, and the one thing I'll say about Nemechek and Hoscar, which you mentioned, or even some of these other guys are starting, a little bit more, is staying on the lead lap. If we should, and we most likely will see long green flag runs here to start this race, right? They won't really get, too wild early in the race, which means we can see an 80 lap run where drivers running 25th on back go a lot down. Well, if Todd Gilliland and John Hunter Nemechek and Hoscar can stay on the lead lap while guys like LaJoy and Zane Smith are trapped a lot down, that's going to give them longer, more of a chance, more of a runway to stay on the lead lap later in the race to potentially get a good finish because they're on the lead lap later in the race. So I do like these guys that start a little bit further forward because as long as they're on the lead lap, they have a chance. If they're a lap down and they're 27th, it's hard for them to make up those spots, hard for them to reach an upside. So I do like those plays, specifically Gillen this week, because I think he's a legit speed guy. Like I think his speed's actually good, but also because he may just stay on the lead lap when these other guys don't. And that will keep him in the race longer and that'll give him some potential. So I do like to play. And then of course we got basically our back markers. Harrison Burton's fine. We average about 6 or 7 DNFs here. So that pretty much puts him at 30th if we get the normal amount of DNFs. Very good chance he's one of them because he sucks. But if we get 7 DNFs, that's going to put him 29th. If he beats, like say Gralla, Kraus, and maybe one other guy, all of a sudden he's 26th. For 5.4K, that'd be good. Like you're able to then pay up for your dominators because of that. So Burton's fine for that reason. Haley and Hemrick are the better drivers. Like they feel like they have the better finishing upside, but starting 28th and 29th, they lack those 5 or 6 place temperature points. Like Haley's been starting 35th and 36th the last 2 weeks, and I was like, wow, that's a no-brainer. Click. Starting 28th is a little more risky, but I do think Haley's got actual top 20 finishing upside. Like he actually has the speed. And back to that lead lap situation, if Haley gets to like 25th, I can see him being on the lead lap at the end of stage 1, whereas Harrison Burton's probably going to be 33rd in a lap down, right? So I think that's probably
he's good at high tire wear tracks too. Haley is, man.
Haley's
He's
good.
Those
Haley's
got
good
2 top 10s here in the next gen era, and you've seen that Rick Ware car has been solid this year. I mean, he's been running. Like I still love Haley at 28th. I'd much rather play Haley over Harrison Burton. I don't care where they're starting. Like.
Yeah, I think Burton's more of a floor play. Like if you're just like, get me 20, 25 points, I think you play Burton. I think Haley's a guy that gets you 30, 35 if he has a great race. So I do think there's more upside there. But Hemrick's a lesser version of that, right? Hemrick's definitely a lesser version of that. Kraus and Gralla are ugly, but salary savings and the rec still apply to them. Like Gralla's 34th instead of 35th. If we get 70 DNFs, he's going to finish 29th at 5K. Like it could be okay. And then the last thing on these guys, and we touched on this already, is the fast laps. Last week, Kraus was optimal because he just got fast laps. If Kraus decides to run it long, or if Gralla, or if any of these guys randomly decide to pit later or have a flat tire and get off sequence, they're going to crush. And so it's easy to say I don't like Harrison Burton because he's a bad play. If he gets a flat tire on lap 20, he's going to come and get fresh tires and get 20 fast laps. And you're going to be like, well, shit, I wish I had Harrison Burton. I think for that reason, all these guys are playable. Yeah, I think all these guys are playable for that reason. I think the fast lap situation could play out in the favor of any of these guys. And the reason that's working out more now than it probably was in the past is because guys are staying out longer, hoping for that caution. Because the pace from 1st to 35th is as close as it's ever been, right? Like Haley's only a couple tenths off the leaders. He's not that far back, whereas Rick Ware Racing would have been a second back with the old generation of car. So because they're kind of in the groove and they're kind of in the flow of things and they're within striking distance, they can stay out, have basically a whole lap ahead of those guys for them to catch back up. And they're just playing the game of hoping for a caution. And if it doesn't come, so what? We come in, we get fresh tires, then we unlap ourselves, right? That situation is presented to all these guys, to all these players. And we've seen it with Brad Keselowski at Texas. Keselowski is a decent driver who's running 20th that race. And he's like, no, we're just going to run long and hope for a caution. And it came. And so that kind of brings all these guys into play on a high tire track because they can run that strategy. And if one of them does it for just 20 laps, they hit. And so I don't want to rule any of them out. I think it's easy to be like, I just don't like them. But in reality, it only takes one.
Have you seen anybody that tracks like stats on who like tends to stay out like, you know, a few extra laps on long green flag runs? Like, is there anybody that tracks that?
No.
Like to look at and say these teams tend to stay out or these teams don't, like.
I know there's someone that does, not from like a DFS perspective, but
Because
like
Denny used to always, right? And
Denny
now it
used
seems
to-
like he's
he
early.
still does
Now
it.
it seems like he's kind of early a little bit.
I think he's early because he's leading, and he's like, you know what, I'm leading. If he was fifth, he's like, okay, I'm gonna stay out. But yeah, I mean, Denny was always that guy. I don't know about like call cars or like anything like that. I don't have any stats on that personally. I don't know of anyone that does it offhand. I feel like I've seen it on Twitter once where someone's like, this guy runs longer, but it was like isolated to one or two guys. It wasn't like a whole thing. So, but that would be good to know for certain tracks like this. It's like if Harrison Burton's always running long, it'd be good to know that. And so,
right.
It's just I personally don't know that. I'm sure somebody somewhere has it working for a race team that collects all this stuff, but not us.
Get him on the show. You're talking about getting Carson Hostefer on the show. Get the guy who keeps that stat on the show. That's what we need.
Yeah, we should get that one guy that does the last 50 laps, ran green the whole way, bullshit, and just says, yeah, if these three guys who didn't wreck 5 laps into the 50 lap run, they would have been in the top 10 in speed. Well, yeah, they fucking wrecked. They only had 5 laps. It's a pretty good average.
Yeah. Right.
Fucking clown. Anyways,
all right. Let's get to your let's wrap this. Let's try to wrap this up. I know we're already running long. Let's get through this. Let's do it. We don't have to. You don't have. You've already talked about everybody, so we don't have to talk through these plays. You just give us some names, okay? Let's get to the core four guys that we should be building our lineups around this weekend.
Larson, Gregson, Reddick, Barry.
Ooh, I love Barry. We didn't talk about Barry a whole lot, but I do like the Barry call. 4-car has been real. The 4-car's historically been really good at Darlington. It seems like he's been showing up at the tracks. The 4-car's been good at. Ran top 12 in the 2 low tire wear races. I like the Barry call there. I know we said not to talk about it, then I freaking talked. Let's get to the poor 4 here. Let's give us 4 guys who you don't like this week.
This is where I get in trouble.
You've been good at this.
William Byron.
Ooh, he's on the ledge. All right, let's go.
Christopher Bell.
Okay, that one's not so ballsy. Okay.
Tyler Gibbs.
Ty Gibbs. Okay, that was.
And then
I think my son crossed him off his list too. Ty Gibbs. I think he had that one.
Smart person. Genius. Kyle Busch.
Kyle Busch, yeah, that's a good one. I know people are going to probably want to play some Kyle Busch. They're going to be looking at him like, well, maybe. He ran good last week. He could do it again. But,
I think, and the reason for those 4, one is salary, one is upside. I don't think they have the upside, and they cost a lot. And the fact that, like I talked about with the fast laps and pretty much that entire group from Austin Dillon on down, is that I think everyone could potentially work out depending on how this race plays out. And so I don't want to write any of those cheap plays off. I don't want to be like, no, they can't hit. Whereas I feel a lot better about Busch not leading 50 laps. So I'm kind of comfortable writing those guys off and not paying the salaries for those guys.
It makes sense. I like it. All right. So we're gonna be spreading. You're gonna be kind of spreading out ownership quite a bit, at the low, and it seems like you're really stacked up on the top with those top guys. Larson, Hamlin, Reddick, and then we're spreading out on the bottom. It sounds like it is.
You know what I screwed up on?
No,
I didn't put Chase Elliott in my core 4.
You didn't, but I don't think you can go back on that though. Can you? Yeah,
My
you
show.
can.
I'll do whatever the hell I want.
I'll allow it. Who are you going to take out? Larson. That's a good one. Take out Larson for Elliott.
I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take out Reddick because
Okay.
core. When I talk about core, I
Yeah.
do factor in cash. I factor in high ownership, and I think Chase Elliott's just got the floor that you need. But now that we're into 4 more, Reddick, he's coming back in. I really do. Reddick to me is just, you can play him in cash. I don't mind it, but to me that's just a guy you smash in tournaments. It's like if you're reliant on Tyler Reddick to dominate to work, just play him in tournaments. And if he does dominate, then you're chasing big money at that point. Brett Keselowski. That's straightforward. I've talked about him enough. I love Brett Keselowski this week. I'm just feeling it. Like I think he checks a lot of boxes.
How do you feel about him at 1,000 to 1? I mean, plus 1,000 to win.
It's probably what he should be. I mean, that makes sense. I don't think that's a great number by any means. Feels about right.
Okay.
Eric Jones.
Eric.
And then we're going to go with, and I don't feel great about this one. We're going to go with Alex Bowman.
I was really hoping to hear you say Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
I almost wanted to.
We talked about him. We barely talked about Bowman. All right.
But, Bowman.
He can show up, though. He could definitely top 5.
Literally last week did exactly what we're asking him to do.
Yeah.
He started 18th last week and finished 7th. Scored 49 points. That's all I'm asking from him. So he's finished top 10 the last 3 races. When you look back all the way to Bristol, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 top 10s in the last 8 races. And they're not just 10th place finishes. There's 2 4ths and a 5th in there. He's just on a really good run, good car. I think that's a good tournament play.
All right, there's a few questions here. Let's see if we can, answer some quick questions here. If you're using an optimizer, would you set these back marker guys in a group? Oh yeah, I think we set and limit to 1, or would you plan multiple in the lineup?
No, there's going to be instances where you want multiple. When you're paying up for like just the blanket chalk. When you play Larson, Reddick, Elliott, and Gregson, you're going to need 2 cheap guys. So no reason to kind of limit yourself there. I think there's opportunity for 2 to be in winning lineups. So no, you don't want to completely write that off. It does feel better to be like, okay, I'm not going to play one of those 3 expensive guys, pay down, and then only have 1 cheap guy. But I mean, if Austin Dillon scores 32 points and, Ricky Stenhouse scores 33, or not Ricky Stenhouse, let's say Haley scores 30 points as well, that's probably going to work out better if Chase Elliott's scoring 65 than trying to get like Priest and Barry to work out or something. So if that makes sense, hopefully that does.
Yeah. Rick has asked this question a couple of times. Let me take a stab at answering if I come out of retirement and answer the question. What about pit stalls? Do they play a factor in this race? I say it all depends on like race flow, right? If we see a ton of cautions this race, every time we get a caution, we're going to see guys come down to get 4 tires, right? So we see a lot of cautions. We're going to get a lot of pit stalls. That pit stalls and those pit teams are going to play a big role in that instance. But long green flag runs, right? I think the big key is going to be who pits early, who stays, who runs long, right? Is going to be how things shake up. Did I do a good job on that one, Larkin?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What driver has a loose wheel?
I don't know if you caught it, but they actually interviewed Keselowski when him and Matt McCall were walking down pit lane, picking pit stalls, and they're like talking about how Darlington was made when it was made wasn't made for 36 cars to be on pit road here, and they're talking about how they're trying to figure out which stall they want and all that. So to them, it meant a lot. Now Brad's an overthinker. So maybe he was just overthinking it a little bit, but I do think it matters here. And anytime you got a clean exit or clean opening in, and that's going to help a lot. Number 1 pit stall is always very advantageous as well. But at the end of the day, if Denny Hamlin's crew keeps pulling off 9.2 second pit stops and Chase Elliott's team keeps killing it, they're going to end up out front at some point, right? So good pit crews are definitely something to rely on, regardless of whether they're pinched in behind someone. But pit selection does matter, and it can play a factor, which we saw with Hamlin last week. He got boxed in a couple times, and it almost took him out of the running for the win. So definitely matters.
Will the Toyotas try the same pit strategy as they get? God, I hope not. Let's not. Is that a shot? Is that a shot of them wrecking? I guess. All right. Let's. We're an hour and 20 minutes into this thing. Jesus, we've definitely ran long. Thank you guys for all hanging around this long. Please, if you've made it this far, you're obviously like things. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button. We're probably pushing over 500 now. Because it's been such an awesome show. Thank you all for listening. Let's do a little giveaway here, right? We got some good prizes to give away. We're giving away 5 entries, right, to the $100,000 to first place DraftKings tournament for today's slate. So that's a value of $15 or $100,000, depending on how good you are, right? So, and obviously, if you follow Larkin's advice here, you're definitely going to probably make more than $15. So, winners that I have here, these are the 4 winners from the retweet. And while I'm doing this, Larkin, pick out a winner from the questions here. 4 winners from the retweet link is going to be winner number 1 is at Rogue Gravity. Winner number 2 is at Dr. PD23. Winner number 3 is, oh shit, look who it is, Eric the Wild. Number 8, that guy, he needs that $15 ticket. So yeah, he's gonna turn that into some big money. Let's go. And then lastly here, at Mikey 2015.
Cool.
All right.
I still haven't picked one out. But I think I want to pull up one last question, and it's going to be the one I go with for the winner. We didn't cover this, and we kind of overlooked it because you were scratching your butt or something. But are we getting multiple lap leaders or stacking the back, or stacking the back, or a balanced lineup for tournaments? So stacking the back is really more of a high carnage Talladega Daytona type race where they can move through the field. Not really stacking the back, but multiple lap leaders, yes. Most likely we're going to see 2 drivers lead a large chunk of this race. So we are going to look for 2 dominator lineups. That's going to force us into a balanced lineup. That's going to force us into probably 2 top-tier drivers, maybe a third, 2 middle-tier drivers like a Gregson, Jones, Berry, and then a couple of punts potentially. That's going to change a little bit depending on who you pivot to, right? If you pivot off of a top-tier guy to like a Keselowski or a Busch or, dominator style, or if you get off of Barry Gregson for someone a little bit riskier, that's going to kind of change how that looks. But it is going to be kind of a more balanced overall lineup. You're probably going to want 2 dominators, potentially a third, but that's going to probably require Elliott having an issue or the place differential plays just not hitting. Like if Elliott, Gregson, Jones, Barry, if like 2 or 3 of those guys just flat out don't hit, then I'll probably bring like 3 dominator lineups into it. But I think the most likely option is for 2 dominators to hit in this slate. And I think that's going to be my winning question of the day. There are some good ones, actually. I might have to do this like on a weekly basis because I feel like we got a lot more activity with that $15 on the line. Real quick on that. So I want to give a thanks to Will for, doing that with us. He won 20 grand off the Xfinity race here last year. He's had a couple of good wins this year, and he wanted to kind of spread the love a little bit. So he threw out there some $15 tickets. I threw out a couple as well because we were going to be at 500 subs. So I thought nice round number. I didn't realize we weren't going to get here till after the show started, but nevertheless, put 2 up as well. So we're able to give away 5 tickets. I'll reach out to you in the DMs on Twitter, and we will get that situated for you to play. If you win money on this, awesome. Let us know. Please share that, of course, and share it on Twitter and say, wow, Ryan's a genius. If you lose the money, if you don't cash the ticket, it's Jason's fault.
Yes, it's always my fault. Yeah. Congrats to the winners. Let's you want to wrap this thing up and announce and give us your winner of who's going to win this race.
Brad Keselowski.
I love it.
This is it. Right. This is the week. He has been so freaking close. I think this is it. I think he's got the car to do it, and I think he gets it done. I'm going with Brad.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening. Follow us on Twitter if you do not, at DFS NASCAR, at Daily Fan Racing. Guys, if you guys are subscribed to Larkin's advice, I let him You can tell them about it.
Yeah, dailyfanracing.com. Got everything up there. I think we got like a 5,000 word write up for this slate. So a lot of content out there for that. Rankings, projections, and of course this podcast, which exists. We cover all the racing slate. So F1, NASCAR, the whole gambit. We have a lot of success as long as our plays don't blow tires with 12 to go. But having a great year, having a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys will join us if you haven't already. If not, we're here every other week. So subscribe to the channel for us, like the video, do all that helps spread the word to get, more people viewing it. At this point, it's all about growing different avenues. And this is definitely one I want to grow a lot. So please subscribe and like, and then follow us on Twitter. I'm looking for 3,000. I think is my next big number. So help me get to 3,000 followers on Twitter or X or whatever the hell it is. And then follow Jason, even though he doesn't really need it and he doesn't really do anything anymore.
He can do nothing. Yeah, just enjoying the retired life, just sitting back and doing some fishing and putting out random tweets that are occasionally right. So you can definitely follow me.
Occasionally right. Yep. Your content's been on point this weekend so far.
Yeah. Don't play Haley Deegan. So pretty easy. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you. I think it's 2 weeks or so. I don't know when our next one we got scheduled, but it's definitely not next week.
Cool, man. Yep. Thanks, everyone. We'll catch you next time. See you.